The building we're in belonged to Dr. Henry Langdon, who was a physician in Cincinnati. He had studied medicine at the Miami Medical College in Cincinnati, and afterwards he joined the Union Army as a surgeon. Now, Dr. Langdon came out of the Army and went into private practice, and he originally worked a partner with Dr. Elston. Dr. Elston eventually retired, and Dr. Langdon took over his practice and his business and this building as well. The building originally was built in 1855 by Dr. Elston, and he lived in a house next door and used this small building as his doctor's office. But back then, doctors didn't have regular business hours. They pretty much had to go to their patient by riding horseback, because patients were normally treated at home, not in the doctor's office like they are today. Dr. Langdon was a very successful surgeon, but surgery as they knew it in the Civil War was considerably different than surgery as we know it today. Surgery back then consisted mainly of amputations. Amputations were necessary because if wounds on the arms or legs became infected, the doctors of the day didn't understand what infections were, but they knew the infection would spread through the body and eventually kill the patient. So the only way to save the patient's life was to amputate the arm or leg or the limb that happened to be infected. Dr. Langdon was also an expert on hematomas or brain injuries, and he would successfully perform these both on soldiers in the field during the Civil War as well as civilians. If you had a blow to the head and swelling occurred, he would relieve that swelling by drilling a small hole in the skull and relieving the pressure. Now, Dr. Langdon had several children, but unfortunately many of them, including and his wife, died at a fairly early age. He himself passed away when he was only 38 years old. And ironically, it was from a brain hemorrhage, which was his specialty for treating people. The office of Dr. Langdon was originally owned by another doctor, Dr. Elston, and it was located in the Linwood or Columbia-Tusculum area on the east end of Cincinnati. Dr. Elston used the building for several years and eventually sold it plus a home that was next to it to Dr. Langdon. There's several interesting architectural features of the building. One of them is the style itself. It's somewhat whimsical with the lattice work and the shape of the building, which was referred to back in the day as steamboat gothic. The reason that was because the building sat on a hill overlooking the Ohio River, and in the 1850s and 60s there were a lot of steamboats going up and down the Ohio. So the building was sort of a whimsical idea to make the building look like one of the steamboats passing up and down the Ohio. Another feature of the building are these blocks. Now, they look like stone, but they're actually made of carved wood, and it's painted with paint and sand to make them look like stone, and that's a technique called rustication. And if you ever have an opportunity to go to George Washington's home in Mount Vernon in Virginia, you'll see exactly the same style, the rustication. So this building was obviously well thought out and well built, and when Dr. Langdon took it over, he maintained it for a number of years. It stayed in the family until it was eventually sold. It was originally located in the east end of Cincinnati in an area called Linwood, or what we sometimes now call Columbia-Tusculum, on Eastern Avenue. Heritage Village really captures the spirit of Ohio and explains why Ohio was so key to the development of the whole United States. Prior to 1787, there were no settlers north of the Ohio River, but in that year, a group of men came down the Ohio from Pittsburgh, and they settled near the Great American Ballpark, where the Licking River joins the Ohio River, and they named their encampment Losantiville. Losantiville eventually was renamed Cincinnati. And the significance of the 1787 date is that back then, by 1790, there were probably only 300 people living in the Cincinnati area. 1790, by 1803, which is only 13 years later, there were 60,000 people in the state of Ohio, and they all came through Cincinnati. And in 1803, Ohio became a state by having a population of 60,000 or more. So that to me is really important, and I think Heritage Village sort of captures the spirit of the buildings and the people in the day when Ohio was quite a booming city.